Okay, for those who are at home, today we looked at Rembrandt, so Google Rembrandt, look at some of his paintings at home. Did anybody read the Spain and the Netherlands part of the chapter? So fine, I did not expect anyone to, I just was gonna mention it. If you did, a lot of that material we have talked about before, because we've talked about, Charles V, Holy Roman Emperor, and he was in Spain, he was Spanish, so he's also the King of Spain, and he runs the Netherlands, and so Spain is very Catholic, and when the Netherlands becomes very Protestant, the Spanish Catholic leaders don't like that, and that's sort of sums up the material in that chapter. But let's look at France. France also was, for almost a century, ripped apart by wars over religion, but wars over other things too. And if you guys will allow it, I guess, what are you gonna do? I'm gonna just read this material out of this textbook I have, which I love, because I feel like it was a little convoluted. Like she talked about things and then she went back and then she talked about Catherine de Medici and then it just, I wasn't a big fan of that section. So, but this tells the story really great, and so I would just like to read this section to you and then stop and talk about it and go over your questions. First of all, who are the Huguenots? Yeah, go ahead. The Protestants in France. That's what they call the Protestants in France. So I would like to read this, and then I can lay this out too because there's a very gruesome picture of the St. Bartholomew's Day Massacre in here as well, so there you go. Okay, here we go. Religion was at the heart of the French civil wars in the 16th century. Concerned by the growth of Calvinism. What is Calvinism? Okay, yes, yeah. Do you have something to add, Jesse? Or was that, did they nail it? Okay, yes. Followers of Calvin, and Calvin's most notable doctrine, the one he's famous for, although there was much more than this, is predestination. And not in the sense that God just knows what's going to happen, but that God actively chooses some people to be saved and some people to go to hell. And it doesn't really matter. You can't do anything about it. All right. So you see the difference? Like it's one thing to say God in his foreknowledge knows what will happen. But it's another thing to say you don't have any free will and it's just like your name was in this book or this book and there's nothing, you can't get it in the other book, the damned or the saved book. That's Calvinism. Okay. And Calvin was French. He ran away from France because he was in trouble with the authorities and he ended up in Geneva, Switzerland. But he was French. So many French people followed his ideas. Okay, back to our book. Concerned with the growth of Calvinism, the French kings tried to stop its spread by persecuting Calvinists, but had little success. Huguenots, as the French Calvinists were called, came from all levels of society. Artisans and shopkeepers, hurt by rising prices and a rigid guild system. Merchants and lawyers in provincial towns whose local privileges were tenuous, and members of the nobility. So we had poor people, rich people, and this is important, people who maybe weren't very happy with things. Did you notice that? Shopkeepers hurt by rising prices. Lawyers and merchants, it says, whose rights were tenuous. They were like hanging on a string. They were about to lose certain rights and privileges. When you're not happy with the way things are, might you want to stir things up just to see if you can get commotion going, and maybe when it's all over, you'll be better off than you are now. Does that make sense? Maybe if we rock and roll France, when this gets over with, I can raise my prices or the prices won't be so high. Maybe my rights will be more secure. And the nobility, it says too. Possibly 40 to 50% of the French nobility became Huguenots. Imagine this. I'm the king, and half the nobles are Protestant, and I'm not. Maybe they would like to get rid of me. Maybe they would like to put one of their own in my place. Including the House of Bourbon, which stood next to the Valois in the royal line of succession and ruled the southern French kingdom of Navarre. Great. The line of noblemen who is next in line for the throne after my family, they're all Protestant. They so want to get rid of me and put one of their own on the throne. The conversion of so many nobles made the Huguenots a potentially dangerous political threat to monarchical power, though the Calvinists constituted only about 7% of the population. They were a strong-willed and well-organized minority. The Catholic majority greatly outnumbered the Calvinist minority. The Valois monarchy was staunchly Catholic, and its control of the Catholic Church, whoa, how does it control the Catholic Church? How are the French kings controlling the Catholic Church? I mean, we may not have said this directly, and we may have just touched on it, but what could a group of people do to make sure they have control of the Catholic Church? What would be a good way to do that? Say again? Well, yeah, but okay, so we are an enclave, we're a secret enclave of French noblemen, and we want to control the Catholic Church. How is the best way for us to control the church? Maybe control who's in charge of it. Who's in charge of it? The Pope. We're going to get popes elected. That's what the French did. They got popes elected. For a while, just before this time, for a while the Pope was captured, and he had a palace in France. Like, the Pope lived in France for a while. That's how tight they were. Okay, so we control the church. We don't want to compromise with those dirty, rotten Protestants, do we? We're sitting pretty. Okay. Its control of the Catholic Church gave it little incentive to look favorably upon Protestantism. When King Henry II, King of France, was killed accidentally in a tournament, he was succeeded by a series of weak and neurotic sons, two of whom were dominated by their mother, Catherine de' Medici. She's one of these Italian Medicis, descended from Lorenzo the Magnificent that we read about, that basically run the show in Italy. And they marry off their children to other places, you know, so they can take over other places too. And she's one of the kids they married off. As regent for her sons, the moderate Catholic Catherine looked to religious compromise as a way to diffuse the political tensions. Can't we just get along? Look, you guys on that side, this is just out of control. We just want to have peace. Let's just be calm and stop fighting with each other. We can find middle ground. That's what Catherine says. But found to her consternation that both sides possessed their share of religious fanatics unwilling to make concessions. No, I will not cooperate with them. They're dirty, rotten heretics, and I will not cooperate with them. The extreme Catholic party, known as the Ultra-Catholics, favored strict opposition to the Huguenots and was led by the Guise family, G-U-I-S-E. You read about these in the Dorothy Mills book. They're the super-duper Catholics, all right? Not just the can't we all get along Catholics. They're the oh no, we will not get along. Possessing the loyalty of Paris and large sections of northern and northwestern France through their client patronage system. Okay, wait a minute. Their client patronage system. Amorous is a noblewoman in Paris. Congratulations, Amorous. And she's got money, And people know it. So they come knocking on Amorous' door. Surely there's something I can do for you. Is there a favor I can do for you? And then maybe you can help support me? Maybe you know people at court. If I help you, you can pull strings for me. And she has a bunch of those people. She has them in that town, and that town, and that town. If she wants to get something done, she just calls up her clients and says, you know how I did this, this, and this for you? Well, it's payback time. I need a favor. And she calls in the favors. This is what they're talking about. What? You are good at this. I hope you use your power for good and not for evil. Possessing the loyalty of Paris, and who possesses it? The Guise family, the super Catholics. Possessing the loyalty of Paris and large sections of northern and northwestern France through their client patronage system, they could recruit and pay for large armies and receive support abroad from the papacy and the Jesuits. Now, I asked you, can we go down to the third question, where it says, were the religious wars in France only about religion? What was the impression you got from what you read? Anybody others? Oh, take it, Lauren. Go for it. Okay, it was political power too. These people were not only killing each other because they didn't like the other's religion. They used the disagreement about religion to get power. Does that make sense? The religious issue was not the only factor that contributed to the French Civil Wars. Towns and provinces, which had long resisted the growing power of monarchical centralization, were only too willing to join a revolt against the monarchy. Fancy long words for, hey, you two gentlemen, Simeon and Jacob, are now the noblemen of France. We don't like the king getting too strong because there's only so much strength to go around, and the stronger he gets, the weaker you get. And hey, I'll revolt against the king if it means I get a little more power. This was also true of the nobility because so many of them were Calvinists, they formed an important base of opposition to the crown. The French wars of religion then represented a major constitutional crisis for France. How is France going to be run in the future? That's what this was deciding. Not just what are we going to believe. Who's going to be in charge? Is it the nobility or a king? How is France going to be run? The wars erupted in 1562 when the powerful Duke of Guise massacred a peaceful congregation of Huguenots at Vassy. That never makes your side look good. Just observation. Massacring innocent people that are just together doing, minding their own business. That's never a good start. In the decade of the 1560s, the Huguenots held their own. Too small a group to conquer France, their armies were so good at defensive campaigns that they could not be defeated either, despite the infamous St. Bartholomew's Day massacre. What happened? I guess I just said, didn't I? Because I asked what happened on St. Bartholomew's Day. Using the word massacre kind of gives away the whole. It was a massacre. What? Huguenots was killed. This massacre of Huguenots in August 1572 occurred at a time when Catholic and Calvinist parties had apparently been reconciled through the marriage of the sister of the reigning Valois king, Charles IX, and Henry of Navarre, the Bourbon ruler of Navarre. I am King Charles. I am very Catholic, but I'm tired of all the hubbub and the brouhaha. So I'm marrying off my sister, Marguerite, to Henry of Navarre. He's going to be over here because we're going to have some other Henrys later. So let's put Henry over here, okay, so we can keep our Henry straight. This is Henry of Navarre. He is marrying Marguerite. And we're all going to be happy because he's very Protestant. And the Protestant's going to marry the Catholic girl, and we all live happily ever after. That's what's going to happen. Henry was the son of Jeanne d'Albret, Queen of Navarre, who had been responsible for introducing Calvinist ideas into her kingdom. Henry was also the acknowledged political leader of the Huguenots, and many Huguenots traveled to Paris for the wedding. But the Guise family persuaded the king and his mother, Catherine de' Medici, that this gathering of Huguenots posed a threat to them. Oh, this whole town's full of these Protestants. Oh, this smells fishy to me. I think they're up to no good. They say they're just here for the wedding. They're up to no good. Charles and his advisors decided to eliminate the Huguenot leaders with one swift blow. According to one French military leader, Charles and his advisors believed that civil war would soon break out anyway, and that it was better to win a battle in Paris, where all the leaders were, than to risk it in the field and fall into a dangerous and uncertain war. This is the day that you read about. There's a long page of a primary source in your book where Marguerite was writing and talking about this day. They didn't tell her what was going on outside the palace walls because they didn't want her to know, because her husband is the leader, but she got wind of it. They're out there, they're outside murdering all the Protestants, of whom my husband-to-be is the leader. The massacre began early in the day on August 24th, when the King's Guard sought out and killed some prominent Huguenot leaders. These murders soon unleashed a wave of violence that gripped the city of Paris. For 3 days, frenzied Catholic mobs roamed the streets of Paris, killing Huguenots in an often cruel and bloodthirsty manner. According to one eyewitness account, quote, "Then they took her and dragged her by the hair a long way through the streets, and spying the gold bracelets on her arms, without having the patience to unfasten them, cut off her wrists." 3 days of killing left 3,000 Huguenots dead. Although not Henry of Navarre, who saved his life. Oh, what did he promise to do? Actually, this was later. He did it twice. What did Henry promise to do? Henry IV promised to do to become king. Did anybody find it? Oh, good. We'll find out together. Okay. Here it comes. Who saved his life, I lost my place, by promising to turn Catholic. Thousands more were killed in provincial towns. The massacre boomeranged, however, because it discredited the Valois dynasty without ending the conflict. Like I said, makes you look bad. Go killing people in the streets. Makes your side look very bad. The fighting continued. The Huguenots rebuilt their strength, and in 1576, 4 years later, the ultra-Catholics formed a holy league, vowing to exterminate heresy and seat a true Catholic champion, Henry, Duke of Guise. He's going to be over here, okay? Because he's another Henry. Remember those Guises? They're the super Catholics. What? Okay, we want to put Henry on the throne in place of the ruling King Henry. I know. So the King of France is Henry. The Protestant leader is Henry, this Henry. Henry is also the Duke of Guise. He's super Catholic. And this is pretty good because these are the very Catholic, these are the very Protestant, and in the middle here we have the let's just get along and stop it already. Okay. We want to put him on the throne and get rid of this Henry, who had succeeded his brother Charles IX. The turning point in the conflict came, gotta love this, in the War of the Three Henrys. Henry, Duke of Guise, in the pay of Philip II of Spain, seized Paris and forced King Henry III to make him chief minister. To rid himself of Guise influence, Henry assassinated the Duke of Guise and then joined with Henry of Navarre, who meanwhile had returned to Calvinism, who was next in line to the throne, to crush the Catholic Holy League and retake the city of Paris. although successful. Henry III was in turn assassinated in 1589 by a monk who was repelled by the spectacle of a Catholic king cooperating with a Protestant. Henry of Navarre now claimed the throne. Realizing, however, that he would never be accepted by Catholic France, Henry took the logical way out and converted once again to Catholicism. He famously said, whether he actually said it or not, but it's famous that he did say it, Paris is worth a mass. Being king is worth going to mass. Like, I'll do it, whatever. Whatever. Which kind of doesn't sound like somebody who really cares what he believes. Sort of. Although, I might be being a little harsh. Maybe if I thought it would save a lot of lives. I don't know. I can't get in his head and know what he was thinking. But that comment, Paris is worth a mass, kind of makes it sound like he's more interested in power than he is in religion. With his coronation in 1594, the French Wars of Religion finally came to an end. Yes, Rhett. Yes, yes. Yes, they all believe this. Yes, and honestly, none of them are acting like Christians. I don't feel. I wonder if, you can be. If something could be true and good in itself, but you get so fixated on it that it turns into something bad because it becomes an idol for you. Does that make sense? Like, everything God made is good, right? Like, he said it was very good after he made man, but we abuse it, right? Like, food is a good thing, but we can be gluttons, or we can hoard food and let other people go hungry. And now we've made it a bad thing. We've fixated on a good thing, and I wonder if they fixated on certain things they believed, and that was their only good. And so it doesn't matter what I do. I can kill other people for it. It doesn't matter. Go ahead, Rhett. Continue. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah. And also, so in the past, I don't know, 50 to 100 years, there's been, in a lot of Protestant circles and in Catholic church circles, there has been change to try to recognize the things that bring us together. So, for example, we have a world out there who just thinks there is no God, or thinks Jesus is just a nice teacher, and who thinks that, well, it may be true for you, but it's not true for me. And so Catholics and Protestants have looked at each other and said, wait a minute, we are more alike than we are like those people that believe those things. We need to work together. And so there tends to be a more friendly feeling in general, not always, but in general between Protestants and Catholics than there was once upon a time. And it's hard for us to understand the animosity, and just that we look at the differences now, and yes, Protestants and Catholics have differences, but when we all can subscribe to the same creed, the Nicene Creed, I believe in God the Father Almighty, creator of heaven and earth. Some of your churches may say that every week, some may not, but basically, Jesus is God, born of a virgin, died for our sins, resurrection, will come back again, we believe in the Holy Spirit, and we can all say these things. Then we look at each other and we say, we have a lot more in common than we have different. despite the differences. Yeah, Brett. Yeah, I mean, I see this starts to go into a gray area that I try to avoid because I don't want to, because we all come from different religious traditions in this room, I'm sure. But yeah, there is still some animosity. It's not healed. There's not healing there. But I think it is better than it was. Oh no, nobody's trying to kill each other. And there's still not, like, there are many Protestants who would not call Catholics Christians. All right, but for the most part, there's a willingness to work together because we see a very dark world out there. You know what I mean? And everybody who confesses Jesus is Lord and the Son of God, we need them. We need them. So it's hard to project ourselves back in the past when there was just downright hatred. Each side thought the other one was just. I mean, I'm not being extreme, going straight to hell. And I remember I used that cancer analogy a few weeks ago. Like, if the cancer's there, you cut it out. You don't mess around. You cut it out. That means we kill 3,000 of them in the streets. So be it. Yeah. Well, you know, and here's the thing. Here's the dangerous thing about history. So I'm telling you a story, and I'm sort of lumping everybody in Paris together into two groups. But we already read some of these people. So there's people out there murdering people in the streets for 3 days. Some of them are doing it because they just hate them. Some of them might not even know exactly what they believe, what the other side believes. So I don't know. I don't know what they believe. I just know they're bad. I hate them. My family says I'm supposed to hate them. Some people really think they're exterminating heresy, that they are doing a service to God. And then some people may just want a piece of the power pie. You know what I mean? They just, I'm going to go out here and stir up trouble, and maybe when it all blows over, I'm going to be better off. Everybody's not going out there for the same reason. Does that make sense to everybody? That's why history is very complicated. So we don't really know why individual people do things. We only know this thing happened. It's like today. It's like the riots that we've seen in the last couple of years. Who knows why those people go out and loot and riot and break windows and steal things? Some of them are really, really angry about the way they perceive Black people are treated. Some of them are angry at the justice system. Some of them just want a new TV. You see, they don't really care. And it's probably all of the above. That happens every time large groups of people do something crazy, I think. All right, nevertheless, the religious problem persisted until the Edict of Nantes was issued in 1598, which said what? That was your last question. Oh, Lord. Oh, no, Ella, do it. Yes. In almost every place. There were some places exempted. But they could enjoy all political privileges, hold public office, have towns under their protection, but had selected places where they had a right to worship. You can't just go anywhere you want and worship, but this is a lot better than killing people. This is a step forward. So if we think about this, it was 1517 when Martin Luther nailed his 95 Theses to the wall, all right? And the edict was 1598. 81 years. 81 years of fighting and conflict and hardship and death before they finally come to the realization it's not fixing anything. It's like family feuds. Like if you're familiar with the Hatfields and the McCoys, it's a famous American family feud. You know, you killed my brother, so I'll kill your uncle, so you kill my cousin, and we go back and forth. And it doesn't really end until we're all dead. As long as there's somebody on the other side to retaliate against, they'll do it. It doesn't really fix anything. And everybody dead isn't a good solution to any problem, I feel like. In Germany, where Martin Luther was, there was not the same level of murder and bloodshed, because pretty early on they decided that, oh, you know, Germany's divided up into counties, duchies, you know, that has a nobleman over it, and whatever the nobleman wants to go, then you all go. So Amorous is now your German noble lady. You just switched languages and nationalities and everything suddenly. She decided to be Protestant, so yay, they're Protestant, you know. Matthias has decided to be Catholic, boom, you're all Catholic. And there's nothing you can do about it. And I'm sorry, if you want to be Protestant, if you've got enough money, maybe you can move to Amorous land. But maybe you can't. Maybe you don't have any way. We take it for granted that people can just move, because we move, but people can't always just move. So it wasn't as bad in Germany. In the Netherlands, it was pretty bad too, the part that but France, the reason I had you read France, France is the worst case scenario. It was worse in France than anywhere else. But hopefully, if you don't remember, I mean, this is just a lot of information and details and lots of Henrys, but just remember that whenever people fight over religion, they might be fighting over something else too. Power, authority. So that is an ugly, ugly scene in church history. And it's a scene that we all need to come to grips with, because I think I mentioned this when we talked about the Inquisition. Unbelievers will come to you someday, or you will read people railing against Christianity, and they will say, look how evil it is. Look at the evils that have been done in the name of Christianity. And they will talk about things like this. They will talk about the Inquisition. And we are told in the Bible to always have an answer for the hope that is in us. You have to have an answer. And it's not an easy answer. One of them may be that these people were not behaving in a Christian way. Just because someone does something in the name of someone else doesn't mean they're really doing it in the name of someone else. It doesn't make it a good thing. I don't know. I will leave it. This is sort of a lifetime processing. I'm still processing the answer to that question. I have no nice answer for you. But it's an accusation against the faith. The fact that we have not loved each other. It's a downer. I will stop on that though. All right, and with that, I will also leave out the picture of the St. Bartholomew Day Massacre. I'm going to leave it here. I know you're going to want to look at it. I'll leave it here. There's lots of limbs. And let me give you your next reading questions. Next week, we are going to read about the church's answer. So all this time, we have been hearing about wars, and we've been hearing about persecution on both sides and setting up Protestant kingdoms, but we haven't heard what the Catholic Church has done about any of this. It took them 30 years to finally call a council to deal with it, the Council of Trent. And you might say, what? Why did you not jump right on this and call the council and deal with it? There were many reasons. One reason is, and many of them we've already talked about. One reason is, when Martin Luther started up, the Pope just thought he was some jerk monk in Germany who would just amount to nothing. No one will listen to him. He's a nobody. And they were wrong. Another problem is, the ruler at this time is our good friend Charles V, Holy Roman Emperor, who's dealing with all this stuff going on in the Netherlands, and Francis I in France is attacking Italy, and he goes to help the Pope, and then the Muslims are coming, and they go fight the sea battle of the Battle of Lepanto off the coast of Greece. They're dealing with all of this. And so it's like, we'll just deal with those Protestant people later. And by the time later came, it had spread like fire in a forest. And it was huge. And it was, you know how some things you unpack out of a container, but you can't stuff it back in the original container? You know? Like, because all the styrofoam and stuff, you stuff back in, you can't get it to fit back in. Once the Reformation got out, they couldn't stuff it back in. That is our reading next week. So we're reading chapter 18. Would you be so good as to hand those two gentlemen, please? Thank you. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm just going to give it to all of you. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So we are only missing one person. Okay, so we only have 2 more weeks after this week, which is crazy. I actually have 3 more weeks. So I don't know what I'm going to do with your last week. I may just record it and say, if you guys want to hear what I have to say in the last week, you can watch it. We'll see as it gets closer. I thought about making you do like a super reading. That would just be mean. Well, I'll think about it. But I did tell you that the essay that I just collected from you, I wouldn't ask you to do another one of those this year. Because technically we could if I assigned another one, but we're not gonna. But we are gonna write something, because we wouldn't want to not write. It'd just be sad. It'd be like not breathing or something. It would be terrible. But, you know, something that I feel like in the modern world, we think is very valuable is creativity. We value people who are creative. And we think of creativity as being making up something someone hasn't done before. Would everyone agree? Like, if you're creative, you make up something that no one's done before. And you know what? In the Renaissance, that just wasn't so important. In fact, in the Middle Ages, it wasn't so important. Do you remember the Chaucer storybook? Way back there. Remember patient Griselda and her jerk husband who took away her children? And I was really irritated by that story. Chaucer did not make up most of those stories in the Canterbury Tales. He took them from other sources. They were refurbished stories, much like, for example, Walt Disney did not make up Snow White and the 7 Dwarfs or Cinderella. Yeah, these were not made up by the movie makers. They were stories, they just gave them their own spin. So writers would do that. They would take an existing story and then they would give it their own spin or their own rendition. Okay. Artists, if you showed promise or you just wanted to be an artist, your family would send you to the studio of one of the great masters, whoever is taking new students or whoever lives nearest you, and just put you there, like boarding school. And you would live there. And you would start out at the bottom of the ladder. You'd be rinsing out brushes and hauling in things to mix paints, sweeping the floor. Yes, Ella. Oils became popular during the Renaissance, but they used something called tempera, and tempera is an egg yolk base. So you have an egg yolk. You always have to have something to hold the color, hold it together, and then you have to have the thing that makes the color. And so it might be some sort of mineral, you know, and I believe that's called tempera. And so tempera paints were a lot of them. But as the Renaissance came, they pioneered experimenting with oil holding the color. watercolors for you. Okay, so yeah, so tempera and then oil paints. But so you would go and you would just, you know, bring in the stuff to mix the paints. Then they'd start letting you mix some of the paints maybe. And eventually you'd get to the point where you and the other students would sit there and you would just have a picture in front of you and you would copy it the best you could. Yeah, I just make everybody, assignment today, copy this. Much like I had you, you know, when I talked about finding a picture and Lauren did one, more than one, didn't you? Did you do more than one? Oh, sorry. So that some of you did that. That was the path to becoming an artist, to copy something. Not to do your own original work, to copy it. And when you got good enough, they would say, oh, you're coming along, you know? I got this painting I've commissioned you. You want to do that bush in the corner? I'll let you do the bush. So you get to do the bush, right? And then you get better. It's like, you know, there's an angel up in, you want to do the angel? You want to do the wing of the angel? Let's do the wing. And so a lot of paintings by masters, we're pretty sure there are certain elements that were done by students. Sometimes the student later became a master. The earliest Raphael we know of, our School of Athens. Oh no, that was sorry, I showed that to the high school kids. He painted an angel in the corner. We're pretty sure it's him. So it wasn't considered low class to copy, is my point of this long story. We kind of consider it, well, if you were creative, you wouldn't have to copy somebody else's work. But in the past, like, yeah, copy. If somebody's good at what they do, copy it. Copy it. And then you'll get good enough that maybe you can branch out and do your own thing, right? Maybe eventually you will paint a piece of art that is so good it makes you a master of the art. It's your masterpiece. That's what a masterpiece is. It's the painting that finally, it's like getting your PhD. Your doctoral thesis and your oral exam, that's your masterpiece. Except that would be a doctorate, not a master's. It's not a perfect analogy. So we're going to do some copying. Not of art, but of writing. One way to notice how good writers write and to accustom ourselves to using their techniques is to copy their sentence structures. We're going to do some together, and then you're going to do one for me. It's from The Hobbit. It's a paragraph from The Hobbit. I was going to say something, and I can't remember what it was, so we're just going to let it go. Let me show you what I mean by copy. Because sometimes we think about copying, and it means like talking like someone else would talk. I don't mean that. I mean actually copying the structure of the sentence. Because when we write, I don't know, I should get out somebody's paper. Actually, I am going to get out somebody's paper and just run it. Right. So I'm just going to read. I don't know whose paper this is. It doesn't have a name on it, so I honestly don't know whose this paper is. I'm just going to read. Most of the time, we tend to start sentences with the subject. We put the subject in front. We just do. I mean, that's where you expect to find the subject in English. And so I'm just going to read the beginning of a bunch of sentences. I think, that's a subject. The witch's influence, that's a subject. If, an if clause, that's not starting with the subject. The witches did not. Macbeth was also. I would say. I gave reasons. You see, lots of starting with the subject. We just naturally do it. But when we make ourselves try to do it a different way, it trains us. And then it's pleasing because our sentences don't all start the same way. It's pleasing to the reader if we put other things in. So let's take a look at the very first sentence of The Hobbit. You can write this down if you want to, but you don't have to, okay? In a hole in the ground There lived a hobbit. This is a very easy sentence. It looks very innocent and simple. But I notice a couple of things. First of all, what's it start with? What? And not only one. It starts with two prepositional phrases. It's the last time you started a sentence with two prepositional phrases in a row. And then who's the subject of everything? Like what is this sentence about? Who or what is this sentence about? A hobbit. And it's the last thing in the sentence. The most important thing, the whole thing is about, comes at the end. We had to wait, and it's a short sentence, but it kind of builds your suspense. In a hole in the ground, there lived, what? Tell me. I'm waiting to find out. So here is how we could copy this to kind of get us used to, wow, I'm going to try two prepositional phrases at the beginning of a sentence. First of all, give me something and tell me what they do. Give me a noun and a verb. It can be anything, honestly. Carpenter, what's the carpenter doing? Building, okay. Okay, now it might sound a little odd, okay. So we have a verb and a subject. Built, they're built a carpenter. All right, now we need to know where is he doing it. It doesn't have to be the word in, but I mean a couple of prepositional phrases. In a garage, and yours is in a barn. Oh, I like it in a barn, and in the rocks. In a barn. In a barn. By the hay. You know what? Built sounds a little awkward. Can we just say worked? There worked a carpenter. You like built? I don't know. There dwelt. Oh, I hope he doesn't live in the barn. He's not doing very well as a carpenter if he's living in the barn, maybe. Do you see how this sentence is just like this sentence? It just has different words. But the structure, no, that doesn't make any sense at all, does it? The structures of the two sentences are the same. Prepositional phrase, kind of a place-holding adverb, verb, subject. And now I've copied that sentence. Let's do another one. Oh yeah, you're so gonna do this. Yes. I did it already. I did the whole paragraph. I'm not asking you to do something I didn't sit down and do. Although I didn't do it this week. I did it like a year ago, but once I do it, I can use it forever. How about this? This is a good one. Harder one. It had a perfectly round door like a porthole. With a shiny yellow brass knob. He likes that. In the exact middle. It is, but you're not a hobbit, you see. So now we need to look at what we've got. We've got it, we've got a pronoun and a verb. We've got an adverb, adjective, noun. Got a prepositional phrase that actually turns out to be a simile. We've got a very long prepositional phrase with an adjective, 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 noun. And then another prepositional phrase. And it has an adjective and a noun too. Now, this is, It's a nicely flowing sentence, but when's the last time that you use so many adjectives, except when Mrs. Ferguson makes you do parallelism, and so many prepositional phrases? I already know something about Mr. Tolkien. He likes prepositional phrases, and he likes adjectives. At least he does in this book. And so I can use this as a tool. I can say, oh, I really like this book. I like the way it's written. I like the way it sounds. How does he make it sound that way? Okay, this is how he makes it sound that way. I could do that. So, first of all, we need to know what we're describing. This is describing his door. This is describing his hobbit hole, actually. What are we going to describe? Can we describe this room? We're sitting in this room, so we can check it out. All right, let's call the room it. It had, do you notice how it's okay that I use this exact same word sometimes. Sometimes there's really no substitute. It's okay. Maybe if I really, really wanted to think hard, I could use a different preposition, a different pronoun, a different verb. It's okay. It had. Okay. Except I don't want to do too much using the same thing. It had a smoothly carpeted base. It had a smoothly carpeted, we don't call them, we just say floor. Because nobody calls the floor of a room a base. I don't know what I'm thinking. Carpeted floor. Like, oh, now we get to do a simile. Like, it's smoothly carpeted like a, yeah, but I feel like it should be shag carpeting if it was like a sheep. It's like oh, you know what? It's like moss. Because it's short. Moss is short, you know, because this is very. Now, I can't really say like a moss. That just doesn't sound right. So I'm going to leave the article out, okay? Like moss. Yeah, I would do like a mossy rock, except I don't want an adjective there. I just want to like a with a boom, 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 whatever. With a what? Well, but that wouldn't be a string of, we need with a noun. What does this room have? With a ceiling. Okay, with a ceiling. No, we're talking about the room. With a tall, blue, well-lit ceiling. Yeah, I could use some more lights, but we're going to give it that. Notice that well-lit, when I use it as a word, I hyphenate it, and it's one word. I know well and lit are two words, but when I call it a well-lit ceiling, that goes, okay. So I have adjective, 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 noun. In, on, where is it has to be where the ceiling is. On the, no. On the, oh, where is, I got it. So where's the ceiling? It's on the top. It's on the top, and what kind of top? Okay, metal, I was thinking lofty, on the lofty top. Now, do you notice if we had picked something other than this room, then this would be a completely different sentence, and it might have been easier, maybe, you know, if we'd picked something else, I don't know. But do you see, here's the important thing. Does everyone see that this sentence is just like this sentence in structure? The frame is the same. It had adverb, adjective, noun, prepositional phrase comparing. Another prepositional phrase with adjective, 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 noun. Another prepositional phrase with one adjective. Right? It's kind of like a game. Do you want to do one more together, or do you? Okay, one more together. Oh, don't say that. It's not, I'm not giving you, it's not like half a page or something. It's just a short paragraph. And then you'll see half the battle is done when you choose what you're going to describe, and then you just have to describe it. You just have to describe it in the way. Okay, should I just look on the first page again? Because, oh, I'm going to go in a little farther. See, I'm trying to find a, oh. Yeah. All right, let's do kind of a shortish one. This is a different, okay. What's laughing? Like her idea of short is not my idea of short. Okay, there was, this will be easier. There was, what is it? A fearful mess in the room. And piles of unwashed Crocs in the kitchen. Pots. Okay, so here's what I noticed. Look, there was adjective, noun, prepositional phrase, and this is the two prepositional phrases. All right, with an adjective, noun, and that one just has a noun. And I think we can just copy that. You know, there. Have you ever noticed that sometimes we use there and it doesn't mean anything? Sometimes we say there and I say the door's over there, and then sometimes I just said there is water on the ground, and I don't mean there, I just mean it exists. It's just, we just say there and it doesn't mean anything. So we can keep that. What are we going to do, Brett? Yeah, yes, so we have a conjunction, but we could substitute another conjunction, but, or, yet, nor. I'm good with that. But first of all, we need to decide what, obviously this is describing the mess in his house the next morning after the party. What are we going to describe? Can we describe, what? Let's try a barn, okay. So we're describing a barn, all right, the interior of a barn. There was, or there were, what is there going to be in the barn? There were, what kind of horses? We need an adjective. There were, what? Oh, what? I don't know what that is. I don't know how to spell it. No, they're not dead horses. What? No death. Haven't we had enough death? We killed 3,000 Huguenots today already. What? I am waiting for a nice horse word. All right, thank you. There were well-fed horses. Where, hey, no, they are well-fed. It's etched in stone now. It cannot be changed. Prepositional phrase, where are they? In the stalls. In this, well, we can't have messy. Shh. Okay, I know we're having fun, but keep so we can hear. We don't want an adjective with it. So in the stalls. All right. So, hey guys. Shh. I feel like we're probably about to describe something else in the barn. So I feel like we're going to probably stick with and. We wouldn't have to. We could do a antithesis, but let's stick with it. And piles. I don't want there to be piles up. Tack. Is that what you call the tackle? Okay. and tack with a prepositional phrase. Describe the tack with a prepositional phrase. Of, okay, but can we say dirty with a prepositional phrase? And tack of dirty leather. Would you make it of leather or metal? Leather. Okay, of dirty leather. Okay, let's take that, but let's see if we can do it with a prepositional phrase. How can we say it's falling apart in yes, in disrepair. All right, so now we have the same sentence. We have our introduction, we have an adjective with a noun telling us what there were, a prepositional phrase telling us where, and some, yes, and piles is a noun too. Of dirty leather in disrepair. Yes, Matthias. Can you? Well, see, now I'm a little afraid now as I give you your assignment because I feel like there's going to be. No. Oh, wait a minute. You can write about anything. You have to use this paragraph. This is your paragraph. I think it's 3 or 4 sentences. You have a whole week. That's mine. This is Mrs. Ferguson's copy. So I'm going to give you this, and then we're going to look at my copy and show you how it works, okay? 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Give to the gentleman. 1. I think I only need 1 left. Okay, so let's read the Tolkien's original paragraph, and then we have just put it on top of the Bartholomew Day Massacre, or on the floor, totally fine. Okay, this is the arrival at the house of Bjorn. Yes, Rhett. Oh, they do. See, you know what I did is apparently I can't count. Probably 2 papers stuck together, but I might not be able to count. Okay, here's his paragraph introducing us to Bjorn's house. They soon came to a wooden gate, high and broad, beyond which they could see gardens and a cluster of low wooden buildings, some thatched and made of unshaped logs, barns, stables, sheds, and a long, low wooden house. Inside, on the southward side of the great hedge, were rows and rows of hives with bell-shaped tops made of straw. The noise of the giant bees flying to and fro and crawling in and out filled all the air. I chose this paragraph just because I like the way it sounds. I personally like the way this description sounds. I like the lists of nouns. I like the to and fro and in and out at the end. I just like the way it sounds. Yes, Matthias? This is mine. I wrote this. So here's what I did. First of all, Tolkien was describing a place. So I needed to think of a place to describe. And I decided to describe my grandparents' farm. You can look at my copy to see things that I just copied, like a word that I copied straight out of the original. It's fine. But here's my oh yes, Matthias. But use this pattern. Yes, that's exactly it. Well, you could probably do a person. It might be harder. Oh, I see. That is okay. So I'm going to make sure Adeline, everybody understands Adeline's question. So, for example, in this, kitchen is a place and disrepair is a state of being, but they're both nouns. And so you can radically change the quality of the word as long as it's the same part of speech. A noun for a noun, an adjective for an adjective, an adverb for an adverb. Yes, Bailey? Yes, yes. Except that, you know, the joke of Mad Libs is it doesn't make any sense, it's so stupid. And then we don't want ours to be like a Mad Lib, but it's exactly the same idea, yes. You could make it like make sense, exactly. Okay, so here is my description of my grandparents' farm based on this paragraph. We soon arrived at a gravel road, straight and rough, down which we could see pigs and a group of miscellaneous farm buildings, some aging and made of weathered boards, barn, machine shed, and garage, and a small white one-story house. Farther on the southward side of the long driveway were squares and squares of enclosures with wide fields filled with mud. The noise of the curious pigs, grunting here and there and wallowing over and under, filled all the air. And you know what? I've got to tell you something. This is better than I would ever write on my own. I would not write this by myself. If you said, describe your grandparents' house, it would not sound this pretty. This is what copying him has done for me. It makes me see, oh, wow, there are a lot of options. When I can pile on the adjectives, I can pile on the prepositional phrases. I don't have to think so linearly and carefully about my fiction writing. I can make it sound beautiful. But this is not me being beautiful. This is Mr. Tolkien being beautiful and me just being a copier. Just like the people looking at the artist's paintings, you know, it's like, wow, you're a great painter. No, I'm a good copier. Does that make sense? But if we did it, so we're going to do it a couple of times, but if you did it often, if I every day copied a section of The Hobbit, eventually it would bleed into my normal writing. Like some of these structures, I would start using them freely, and my writing would get better. Yeah, Ella. No, that is my writing. That is my writing. But it is better than any writing I could do unaided. You know, I may use crutches, but it's still me walking. You see what I mean? And then I get better and I don't need the crutches anymore. So when you got training wheels on your bicycle, but you're doing the pedals. But that's a good distinction. But no, if I took The Hobbit and I wrote an entire book and I copied the structure of every sentence, but it was a completely different story, it would still be my story. But it would be better written than any story that I would probably write on my own, because he's good with words, and he not good with words so much as good at putting words together in combinations. Yeah, Rhett. Probably. Tolkien was a good copier. I don't know if he did this particular exercise. People have done this exercise to be better writers. But he spent his life studying language. He was a philologist, which is literally lover of language. He knew Latin and Greek and Anglo-Saxon and French and Italian, and he knew language inside and out. And so when you study other languages, it also alerts you to the way we put words together. You know, when you translate things from one language into another, you have to think, well, how can I express that idea in this new language that I'm translating into? How do I put the words together to make the same idea come across? And I have a feeling that just a lifetime of studying language and literature does this. The more you read really good books, the more it rubs off on you too. And now I'm going to be very judgmental, but like books written more than 70 years ago, more than 60 or 70 years ago. Because by the time I was a little girl, it was already too late. Like, books were sort of not as rich, and they were a little more dumbed down. Like when we read the G.A. Henty book. You may have loved it or hated it, but it wasn't just simple sentences and simple vocabulary. You know, it was a little more elaborate. And the more you soak that in, I think it just soaks into your blood and your mind, and you just write it. So that's what I think about him, probably. C.S. Lewis, same way. A studier of language and a lover of language. Now, does it make sense to everyone? First of all, I've given this assignment in the past, and people did not understand something. You are going to do this paragraph. Don't open up the book and pick your own paragraph. Use this paragraph. Okay? Everybody got that? And then what we're looking at is there a prepositional phrase here? I will put a prepositional phrase. Are there two adjectives in a noun? I will use two adjectives in a noun. If there's no real way to change the word, notice I didn't even change on the southward side. Mine has on the southward side as well. Partly because these things really were on the southward side of my grandparents' driveway. Also just because it just seemed silly to, on the northward side, westward, just put southward. I don't know how to change that into something else. And if you're just stumped, it's okay. Use the same words, especially when there's a there was. It is. It's kind of hard to do anything with that. That's okay. But describe a place of your own, or a person, or a thing. It's totally doable. It wouldn't have to be a place, but I feel like a place lends itself nicely to this. Oh, certainly. It doesn't have to be a real place. Oh, sure. It doesn't have to be an actual place. I mean, no, spoiler alert, Beorn's house is not a real place. Just hate to tell you that. Yes, Ella. Yes, yes. Repeat. Because that's part of the sound of it. And you know, think about the difference between saying there were rows of hives and saying there were rows and rows of hives. First of all, it sounds pretty. Second of all, it gives you an impression of just a lot. Rows, but when you say rows and rows, it's like I see endless, in the distance, rows of them. And it gives you a different feeling. So squares and squares of enclosures all over the place. Yes? It's going to be really close. I don't know how to answer that because it's going to be really close if you're substituting out adjective. But you know what? Remember our the one before this where we left the out? We left because didn't. Yeah, oh yeah. So you might be leaving out thes or us because they just don't fit with the word you chose. Yeah, it'll be the same. Give it a shot and see how it goes. If you look at it the right way, it is kind of fun. It's kind of like a game. And then if you walk through it and you produce something, I bet it's going to be a better paragraph than you ever would have written on your own, just like that's a better paragraph than I would have written. Okay? Are we good? Does any other questions? It'll be fine. Like, they look so glum. Mm-hmm. Yes?
So, like,
those would be adverbs because they tell where they're doing it, but yeah. So notice how those are opposites. So in Tolkien's we have to and fro, in and out. So, and I tried to do opposites, here and there, over and under, up and down, right and left. Do you see a pair of opposites? Back and forth. That's a good pair. Help me. Can you think of another word pair, opposite pair that we use like that? Up and down, in and out, to and fro, back and forth, side to side. That would work. That's a little more complicated, but it would work. It would work. North to west, north to south, north to south, east to west. Sure. You know what? Also, the thesaurus is your friend. Yeah, except in this case it was up and down. You know, it wasn't with a prepositional phrase included, but yes. Up and down. If you know, thesaurus will give you opposites. If you want to use inside and outside, that's kind of related to in and out. But look it up if you need a pair of opposites. And you know what? I won't smack anyone if you use to and fro or in and out. There will be no smacking. All right. But be as creative as you can. See, this is the best of both worlds. We're copying. So we're getting the sentence structure that a great writer wrote, but yet we do use our creativity because we get to choose the words, we get to choose the thing we're describing, but we're going to put that description together and those words that we chose together into a very pleasing structure that maybe wouldn't be the normal structure that we use. Another thing, I will throw my pitch in for this, and then I want to talk about The Hobbit. I think at the beginning of the year, I talked to you guys, it might have been the high school, but I think I tell everyone this, starting a commonplace book. A commonplace book is a journal. It can be a spiral notebook. It can be a fancy schmancy leather journal from Barnes & Noble, don't care. It's paper to write on. And you write down quotes from books you read that you just love, for whatever reason. This is for you. This is your personal thing. And so you have your own quote book. You read a poem, it's like, that's awesome. I copy it down. I read a quote from something, I think that's profound. I write it down. I read a quote and I think that's beautiful. I gotta write that down. I don't want to forget that. So now I have a little, mine is leather, and I have a bad habit of reading and reading and reading and not writing down and thinking, you'll remember. So now if I'm too lazy to write it down right away, I have to stick little flags in my book to make sure I write it down later. And the people of the past, everyone kept these. And you can write little comments of your own in there, like, this was the most awesome thing I had ever read in my life, and put the date, you know. But I copy them out, and sometimes it is a couple of pages. Sometimes there's something and I just think, that's stunningly beautiful, I never want to forget it, especially if it's a library book and I have to take it back. I can't just keep it. So, and you know what? The process of copying it out into my book alerts me, like, that's beautiful. Why is that so beautiful? So you spend a lot of time writing, really good writing down, copying it. It changes the way you write. It makes you a better writer. I wholeheartedly recommend getting whatever sort of little book that you like, and next time you read something and you say, I don't ever want to forget that. That's great. Write it down. And years from now, you will have a book that's your personal quote book. And I can browse through mine and I can remember what I was thinking, what was important to me, you know, at the time that I wrote that down. It's kind of fun. But it also makes you a better writer. Okay. Any other questions? Don't be afraid. It might actually end up being fun. It might be more fun than a 5-paragraph essay. I'm not making promises, just saying might be. I wanted to mention a couple of things. Hopefully we are still enjoying our walk through The Hobbit, despite the large spiders, which is just horrific. I hate spiders. I wanted to mention a couple of things from last time, though, because, and Rembrandt. I got to remember Rembrandt. A comment about the goblins. I thought this is very interesting. Tolkien says, now goblins are cruel, wicked, and bad-hearted. They make no beautiful things, but they make many clever ones. What is the difference? What does he mean by clever ones, do you think? tricky. What do you think, Jesse? I am thinking mechanic too. What do you think, Lauren? Mechanic? Like tools? I'm thinking of tools. I know how to make something that does a job, gets it done. But could you make something that gets it done and it could still be beautiful? You could, yeah, Bailey. What does it say about a creature's character? I would say a person, the character of an individual, that they just have no love for anything beautiful. Wouldn't that be sad? I mean, you might not chase after beautiful things, but all of us know what it is to look at a pretty sunrise or a sunset, or the sun on the water, and just take a moment and say, that's really pretty. That's really pretty. But they make no beautiful things, but many clever ones. And I feel like it's just a little tiny sentence, but it tells me a lot about goblins. They get the job done, and they don't mess around with admiring anything. We just got to get it done. We got a job to do, we're going to get it done. I don't know. It makes me want to make sure I appreciate beautiful things so I don't turn into a goblin. I'm not too obsessed with getting things done. And then I wanted to go back and talk one more time about the riddle game. Let me read this paragraph to you. You know, he asked, what have I got in my pockets? It's not really a riddle, but Gollum thought it was. And so he asked for 3 guesses, but he actually took 4, because at the very end he yelled, string or nothing. Both wrong, cried Bilbo, very much relieved. And he jumped at once to his feet, put his back to the nearest wall, and held out his little sword. He knew, of course, that the riddle game was sacred and of immense antiquity, and even wicked creatures were afraid to cheat when they played at it. But he felt he could not trust this slimy thing to keep up any promise at a pinch. Any excuse would do for him to slide out of it. And after all, that last question had not been a genuine riddle, according to the ancient laws. Why is Bilbo slightly uncomfortable? Like, it sounds to me like Bilbo, it says twice in this paragraph, the riddle game was sacred and of immense antiquity, and even wicked creatures were afraid to cheat. He cheated. He cheated. And it makes him deeply uncomfortable. Now, why did he cheat? I mean, why is he going to let it slide? Yeah, because Gollum's going to eat him. And we know from the book that Gollum had no intention of showing him the way out. There was never going to be a scenario where Bilbo wins and he gets to see the way out. Not going to happen. Gollum was going to go back to his island and put on his magic ring and then eat him. But still, Bilbo, we hear a lot about Bilbo, don't we? Because he's uncomfortable. He's willing to cheat. He's in a pinch. He's not a goblin. He is not. I am not at liberty to tell you any of Gollum's backstory because I want you to find out for yourself someday. Well, no. I would love to see some of you in the fall, if you're back in the fall, and find out that you read The Lord of the Rings after this. 3. In addition to this. Okay, and then you will know. All right. Do you know, is it, I don't even know how to ask that question. Like, are there circumstances where it's okay to cheat, or should it always make us uncomfortable?
I feel like there are circumstances that don't go like circumstances where it's like it was his life. Like, what's more important, your life or the middle? I think. And so, but it's still
What were you going to say, Jesse? No, and this is interesting because stepping on a crack is your self-imposed rule, but cheating or lying, that is not a self-imposed rule on us. That is a rule imposed by a higher power. I don't have an easy answer. I'm just saying Bilbo is uncomfortable. Bilbo knows he cheated and he's uncomfortable, even though he's up against a creature that is going to eat him. Yes, Rhett. I don't know. What's the story? Oh, Gawain and the Green Knights? I kept the lace? And the Green Knight says, no, I totally understand why you would do that. You cheated, but you cheated for a trivial reason. But the question is there ever a trivial reason? I don't have the answer. You can meditate on that. Of course it did, it didn't take them weeks obviously, but it did say a long period of time sometimes went by in the other one. I love the part where Bilbo takes a long time and Gollum starts saying, is it juicy? Is it tasty? You know, it's like, that would not help me think, I feel like. So I don't have time to look at all these, but let me look at this one. Bilbo was the little fellow bobbing and puffing on the mat, who, though it runs in his blood, the took side of his blood, that he might have adventures. But he was much more interested in pipes, handkerchiefs, and second breakfast, you know, than any sort of adventure. And he has killed a giant spider. And it says this: the spider lay dead beside him, and his sword blade was stained black. Somehow the killing of the giant spider, all alone by himself in the dark, without the help of the wizard or the dwarves or anyone else, made a great difference to Mr. Baggins. He felt a different person, and much fiercer and bolder, in spite of an empty stomach, as he wiped his sword on the grass and put it back into its sheath. I will give you a name, he said to it, and I shall call you Sting. The troll sword. What? Yes. It's got a sting. Beware of its sting. I shall call you Sting. And so, remember at the beginning it said he had that overwhelming feeling he would do anything to be thought fierce. And now, unfortunately, no witnesses. But he didn't need witnesses, did he? Because it changed something inside him. But he rescues all the dwarves, because they're all sulked up, you know, like spiders do to their flies. There they lay for some time, puffing and panting, which reminds me of the little fellow puffing on the mat. Now the dwarves are the ones who are puffing. But very soon they begin to ask questions. They had to have the whole vanishing business explained carefully. But after a time, the light began to fail, and then other questions were asked. Where were they? What was their path? Where was there any food? What were they going to do next? These questions they asked over and over again, and it was from little Bilbo that they seemed to expect to get the answers, from which you can see that they had changed their opinion of Mr. Baggins very much, and had begun to have a great respect for him, as Gandalf had said they would. You know, I will leave you with this. Look at Rembrandt on the way out, but, you know, the outside doesn't always tell you what's on the inside, does it? But the inside doesn't come out until it's made to come out. We're never brave until we have a reason to be brave, are we? And that's kind of a scary thing. I may think myself very brave or not, but I don't know until I have a situation where, and hopefully it will not be giant spiders. Please don't let it be giant spiders. Even big snakes. Giant spiders. Please read chapters 9 through 12. Copy a paragraph for me, and read chapter 18 of Dorothy Mills. Take a glance at Rembrandt on your way out, and I totally kept you 5 minutes over again, but we knew that would happen, didn't we?